2022 is finally here, and according to multiple sources in the Apple tech world, this is going to be an absolutely huge year for Apple, with groundbreaking releases on multiple fronts like their new VR headset, a complete iPhone redesign with an 8K capable camera, and of course, the new Apple Silicon Mac Pro, which will be breaking performance records left and right. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about every single new Mac that we should be expecting from Apple in 2022 with updated leaks and release dates, so you'll know exactly what to expect and when, to help you decide if you should buy a Mac right now or wait for those new ones. So without further ado, let's get right into it. The next new Mac that we should expect to see is the new redesigned Mac Mini, and that's because a lot of leakers were expecting it to come as soon as the end of 2021, like Jon Prosser, for example, who showed off renders of what the design could look like. And Dylan DKT even said that the Mac Mini will most likely be revealed alongside the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros, but that unfortunately never happened. And then he came out and explained that Apple wanted as much attention on the new MacBooks as possible, or else the other Macs like the Mac Mini would be lost in all of the MacBook noise, and I think he was right because we were pretty busy with those MacBook Pros. So the main question we have to answer is, when exactly will that new high-end Mac Mini be coming? And on top of that, how much is it gonna cost? Well, first of all, if those leakers were expecting it at the end of 2021, then it shouldn't be delayed for too long, because we fully expect it to pack the same M1 Pro and M1 Max chips that have already been revealed. And we know that for sure because those chips came in the new MacBook Pros, which replaced the old 13 and 16-inch high-end Intel-based MacBook Pro models. And as we all know, Apple still sells the high-end Intel Mac Mini. So the M1 Pro and Max chips make perfect sense for that high-end Apple Silicon replacement, while the M1 Mac Mini will continue to be sold for a while. And the thing is that Apple can't wait too long, because they're expected to release the new low-end M2 chip between the middle and end of 2022. So this basically points to the new Mac Mini releasing between now and the springtime. And in my personal opinion, a reveal at their March event would be perfect so that they could show off the new design. But there's also a chance that they could do a simple press release before that, but it's probably unlikely since Apple usually shows off redesigns at their events. Now, getting into the next Mac that we should expect, we have the new 27-inch Apple Silicon iMac, which will finally replace the current Intel model that to this day is still up for sale on Apple's website. Based on various sources like Ross Young and Dylan DKT, this iMac should be coming in the first quarter of 2022, which points to a reveal at Apple's March event. But getting into the actual design and performance details, we recently got some leaks that we weren't expecting at all, and it totally changes my outlook on the new iMac. But before I get into that, I want to ask you guys to please hit the subscribe button below if you haven't already, since we're going to have a massive amount of coverage on each of these new Macs, just like we did with the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros. So subscribe right now to help us towards our goal of 1 million subscribers. Now, getting back to the iMac, we got a report from Digitimes claiming that the new 27-inch iMac is actually launching in multiple colors, which is contrary to the popular thought or idea that Apple would be selling this new iMac in a darker color scheme, like the space gray color option from the old iMac Pro, which is actually missing on the 24-inch M1 iMac. So if Digitimes is correct about the colors, then the iMac will most likely be coming with off-white bezels. So it's gonna look something like this image I made back in May of 2021, but it's gonna be a 27-inch, not a 30-inch. And to add to all of that, Digitimes reported that parts for these new iMacs have shipped, and unfortunately, the new 27-inch iMac will not feature a mini LED display, which goes directly against what Ross Young and Dylan DKT have been saying. But then again, Ross did come out and say that they still believe it's gonna have mini LED, and seeing as he has a 100% track record compared to 58.3 for DigiTimes, I actually trust Ross a lot more. But with that said, if they are right, then I think the scenario that makes the most sense is that the base model ships with a regular 5K LCD display, and then you'll have the option of upgrading to the 120Hz ProMotion Mini LED version for a couple of $100 extra. Kind of like what Apple did in the past with a 1080p display on the base 21.5-inch iMac. And then the other possibility is that Apple could split off the iMac into a 27-inch iMac with a regular display and a 27-inch iMac Pro with a mini LED display releasing at the same time, which doesn't seem as likely, but I guess we'll see. And in terms of the performance, we can expect it to come with the M1 Pro and M1 Max chips for sure, and potentially a new 20-core M1 Max Duo chip, which will be very expensive, but also very powerful. And you can learn all about that in the video that I recently made on that topic. Now moving on to the next Mac that we should expect, we of course have the new completely redesigned M2 MacBook Air, which has been reported on by multiple sources like Mark Gurman, who is 100% sure that it's coming next year. And while we originally thought it was coming in the middle of 2022 because of a report from Ming-Chi Kuo, we recently got a couple of new reports that say otherwise. First off, Ming released an updated report claiming that the new MacBook Air will only begin mass production in the third quarter of 2022. And since the MacBook Air will 100% have to get revealed at some sort of event, the usual WWDC event in June is no longer likely. Instead, we have reports that Apple could announce their new VR headset at WWDC, which is probably the perfect event for it because Apple would want developers to begin making apps for the headset ahead of time before it launches. And we also got a report from Ming-Chi Kuo that the VR headset is coming in late 2022, which would be just enough time for developers to learn about the software and get prepped for the big launch. So because of all of that, it's unlikely that the M2 MacBook Air would be ready to reveal at WWDC, which means that we'll have to wait until at least October or November to see the new design. And if you're wondering what to expect in terms of the design and performance, it'll basically be a thinner and lighter version of the current 14-inch MacBook Pro, except with multiple color options, a smaller 13-inch display without 120Hz ProMotion, just 2 Thunderbolt ports, off-white bezels, and a matching off-white keyboard. And as far as performance, the M2 chip will directly replace the M1, giving it a nice boost in terms of single core, potentially up to 2,000 points in Geekbench 5, and a decent iterative improvement in multi-core, with the biggest jump coming to the graphics side because it's gonna get an extra 2 GPU cores over the M1. And as far as the other Macs that we should expect, Mark Gurman also believes that we'll be getting an M2 entry-level MacBook Pro with the same M2 chip as the redesigned MacBook Air, and I personally believe that it's going to be revealed alongside the Air at Apple's October or November event. And in terms of the design and specs, I personally think it'll have the same redesign as the current 14-inch MacBook Pro, except toned down in terms of the feature set and performance to help cut costs and bring the price down. Like for example, it may have one less Thunderbolt port, probably a toned down cooling system with just a single fan, as well as toned down speaker quality, and maybe even slower SSDs and slower unified memory compared to what you get inside the high-end 14-inch model. However, the display will likely still get 120Hz ProMotion and mini LED, which is going to be very nice, but the downside will be that it'll probably start with just a 256 gig SSD and maybe even just 8 gigs of RAM to bring the price down to around $1399 or $1499. And now getting on to the next Mac, we have the refresh of the low-end M1 Mac Mini, which is currently selling for a very low price of $699. Now, if Apple ends up refreshing it in 2022, it's probably going to be alongside the other M2 MacBooks, pretty much exactly like they did in 2020 with the original M1 Macs when they released all of them at once. However, since the M1 Mac Mini is so inexpensive, there's a chance that Apple might actually keep this M1 model around for up to another year as the base model, which is what I expect them to do with the M1 MacBook Air. But in the case that they actually do refresh it, it'll probably come with the same new redesign as the high-end Mac Mini, which Jon Prosser showed off, but with the M2 chip, fewer ports, and toned down specs like 256 gigs of SSD storage and 8 gigs of unified memory, and that's it. And then finally, we have the new Apple Silicon Mac Pro, which I think will look just like the current one, except about 33% smaller and packing 2 options for the chip, the 20-core M1 Max Duo and the 40-core M1 Max Quadra, which will contain multiple M1 Max dies within the SoC package. And as far as the release date, I fully expect it to start shipping in December, with it probably being revealed in November. And there's actually a chance that Apple could refresh the Intel model just one more time, but maybe they'll decide not to do that because of the success of Apple Silicon. And along with all of that, there are rumors from multiple sources pointing to Apple working on new external displays, pointing to both low-end displays and a new high-end model with a built-in A13 chip, which would likely be a new Pro Display XDR. Dylan DKT also came out and said that there are 3 LG-made external displays in early development, 2 of which will have the same specs as the upcoming 24 and 27-inch iMac displays with ProMotion and Mini LED, and 1 of which with a built-in Apple Silicon chip, perfectly lining up with the A13 chip leak from 9to5Mac. Now, since he said that they're still in early development, I wouldn't expect any of these until at least December of 2022 and potentially even later into 2023. But as for the low-end models, I expect the 24-inch to start at $700 to $1,000, with the 27-inch probably at around $1,300 to $1,500, while the new 6K Pro Display XDR with Mini LED and ProMotion will probably remain at the same price as before, potentially with a $1,000 price reduction, but who knows. And as far as the lower-end 24-inch iMac being refreshed with the M2 chip, I think Apple is going to continue their trend of delaying the iMac launches, so we'll probably see that new iMac in the spring of 2023. So there you guys go, those are all the Macs that we should be expecting in 2022, and if you disagree with any of my thoughts or ideas, go ahead and comment them down below. But if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and tap the like button and click the circle button to subscribe for more videos like this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.